Today, peace talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul amid escalating war.
What we know about the attack in Colorado at a demonstration to remember the Israeli hostages who remain in Gaza. And the US Senate takes up Trump's big, beautiful bill.
It's Monday, June 2nd. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes every weekday. I'm Tara Oakes in Liverpool.
And I'm Christopher Waljasper in Chicago.
First to the war in Ukraine and a sharp ramping up of fighting. With weekend drone battles coming ahead of a fresh set of direct peace talks beginning today in Istanbul. Our reporter Max Hunder is in Kiev.
You had the war's largest Russian drone attack on Ukraine. Almost 480 drones launched by Russia. Ukraine shot most of them down, but that's an incredible number. And then we got from a Ukrainian security official that the Ukrainian domestic intelligence had, they said, conducted this huge drone attack where they simultaneously attacked 4 Russian air bases. The furthest is, I think, over 4,000 kilometers from Ukraine. This is way further than anything Ukraine's been able to hit before. So we initially wondered, how on earth is this possible? And we soon got an answer from our source, which is that these drones were hidden over the course of a year and a half. Ukraine, which snuck them into Russia, hid them in the roofs of wooden sheds. And then these roofs sort of retracted automatically as they were being transported on trucks and essentially just took off. The dozens of these drones then zoomed into Russian strategic bombers, which were thousands of kilometers away from Ukraine and thought presumably they were rather safe from Ukrainian attack.
And with all this as a backdrop, what can we expect from this round of negotiations?
What Ukraine wants to see is a 30-day full ceasefire, as well as the release of all prisoners of war on both sides and the release of the children that Russia essentially took away from occupied areas of Ukraine. Ukraine says that it wants to see the current front line as the starting point for negotiations, and it also wants to ensure that all Russian territorial gains in Ukraine since February 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea illegally, Ukraine basically is keen for none of that, as well as the current occupation in this war, to be recognized. Russia legally recognizes 4 Ukrainian provinces, all of which Russia mostly controls but does not fully control. Russia sees those regions as fully its own, and I think Ukraine has perhaps included this point to push against that Russian line.
Now to an election across the border from Ukraine that Kiev and much of Europe has been watching closely. Nationalist opposition candidate Karol Nawrocki has won Poland's presidential election. Nawrocki won the backing of US President Donald Trump for his bid for Poland's top job. He campaigned on a promise to make sure economic and social policies favour Poles over other nationalities, including refugees from neighbouring Ukraine. His win is a blow to the reform agenda of the pro-European government.
An attack in Boulder, Colorado on Sunday is being investigated as a hate crime after a man attacked a crowd demonstrating and calling for the release of the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza.
Authorities have named the suspect as Mohammed Suleiman, who was hospitalized shortly after the attack. Alexandra Alper's been covering the latest.
So the details are still emerging, but what we know is that there is a regular demonstration of people remembering the Israeli hostages that are still in Gaza. And it looks like a man threw an incendiary device into this crowd of people. An eyewitness saw about 4 women sitting or lying down. One of them had burns that appeared so bad that it looked like she had been wrapped in a flag, perhaps to put out some of the burns. The man is in custody now, and we're told that he did yell "Free Palestine" during the attack, and authorities are now investigating it as a potential hate crime. And it comes sort of amid heightened tensions in the United States over Israel's war in Gaza. We've seen both an increase in anti-Semitic hate crime as well as conservative groups led by President Donald Trump to brand pro-Palestinian protests as anti-Semitic, and to detain protesters of Israel's war in Gaza and cut off funding to universities that allowed for those protests.
To Gaza now, where there are conflicting reports over a Sunday incident. According to the Gazan Health Ministry, more than 30 Palestinians were killed near a food distribution site, with witnesses reporting that Israeli soldiers fired on people trying to collect food. Israel denies the allegation. The US-based Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says food was distributed in Rafah without any incidents. The ICRC says its field hospital in Rafah received almost 200 casualties with gunshot or shrapnel wounds, all of whom said they've been trying to reach an aid site.
And OPEC Plus is increasing its oil output in July by 411,000 barrels a day as it attempts to wrestle back market share and punish overproducers. The group of oil-producing nations has been increasing production since April. It tripled its output in May and plans to continue at that pace through July. The Republican-led Senate is back in session today, and one of its first priorities will be to tackle President Donald Trump's tax and spending bill. As it winds its way through the upper chamber, the bill is likely to change drastically, and whether it passes at all is still an open question. Trump has promised his tax cuts, which will add trillions to the deficit, will benefit working-class Americans. But analysts say some of the more popular provisions, like tax breaks on tips, actually have few upsides for low-income Americans. Our reporter Andy Sullivan is in Washington, D.C.
Problem is, the tax break as written wouldn't actually help a lot of people, those bartenders, hairdressers, people like that who rely on tipped income. And that's because a lot of these people basically do not make enough money to pay federal taxes to begin with. So a tax break wouldn't help them. You've got to make money above a certain threshold. You have to declare it on your taxes. You've got to fill out forms, etc. And that's sort of broadly true of the tax bill as a whole. It expands a number of other tax breaks that are aimed at lower income folks. A tax break for if you have kids, for example, or if you're working and not earning that much money. But it adds a lot of new provisions and red tape. For example, it requires people to provide a social security number. That means fewer people would qualify. There's more sort of administrative barriers and hurdles to claiming these benefits that a lot of people might just throw up their hands and say, sorry, I can't do this. At the same time, it's getting harder to claim these benefits, Medicaid and SNAP, that help working people cover their bills, get health coverage, etc. Those programs are being tightened. It's harder to qualify. Millions of few people will benefit from them in years to come. So at the end of the day, people might be paying more money out of pocket for health care, for groceries, and that would more than offset any tax savings they might get from the bill, according to several analyses we've looked at.
Today's recommended read is on how the Trump administration's cuts threaten safety training for some of America's most dangerous jobs. Based on hours of interviews, our reporting shows that the safety trainings aimed at fishermen, loggers, farmers, and other workers could be scaled back or wound down entirely as soon as July. You can read more by following the link in the pod description.
For more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast player. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.